Welcome back to the channel, everyone. We're here with another video. I'm pretty excited about this one just because I get to show you my fish tanks, and I think it's a good place to start. I think it's a good place that we can start things off because this is a brand new system of mine, and this is the 230-gallon tank that I had set up about a month and a half ago, creeping up on 2 months. So today I wanted to talk about it, tell you my plans, and tell you guys what's going on over here because only temporary for now. So we'll kind of go over everything, and we'll do a deep dive, and I'll show you all the equipment, and I'll show you how I run it, and yeah, like I said, we'll show you the plan. So let's get it going. Okay, this is the tank. Let's just dive right in. So like I was saying, this is a 230-gallon acrylic fish tank. I wanted to do acrylic, and acrylic honestly isn't my favorite just because of how bad it can scratch and how it, degrades over time, but it's really light and it was in really good condition. It was a used tank, I got it used, so I'm very happy with it, and really the only thing to keep in mind at this point is just don't scratch it, be careful with it. The dimensions, it's 6 foot by 2 foot by something foot, something like that, but it equates to about 230 gallons total. It's a pretty good sized system. Perfect for me in this space just because I didn't want to go too much bigger. Floor, taking into account that we don't want it to fall through, we did have to put in some floor jacks to make sure that it doesn't sag. Would it fall through the floor? Probably not, but leaning forward and backwards is a concern when you're putting in a fish tank this big, so floor jacks under there just give me the peace of mind, and I think it'll work perfectly fine, and it has stayed completely level. So it's been running, like I was saying, for a few months now. I got all of my live rock in here. It's getting established and getting a pod population going, and it's going pretty well. We'll go over the problems I've had in a little bit here because it hasn't been pretty. I have lost fish in here, but I want to be completely transparent with you guys and keep it as real as I can, because I'm not going to sit here and say that this tank has been awesome, nothing's gone wrong, because things have gone wrong, and there are things that I can't fully explain, like a direct answer to why did my fish die. We have our guesses and we've honed it into a specific couple things, but not a true this is what happened, this is what we're dealing with sort of deal. So we'll talk about that later, but all in all, the system itself has been running great. You can kind of see up top I've got the 2 overflows. Pretty basic stuff, nothing super complicated, keeping it very simple. You can see the return in the middle there, that PVC coming down. So they're both separate from each other, the overflows. They both come down into different sides of the sump. It's actually been very efficient. The 2 filter stocks that I have running have been doing a very good job. The tank is staying very clear. It's I do have nutrients, which is actually fantastic, but it's not getting super dirty because for a while I was feeding foods that can dirty up the water a little bit, but it's been running really good. And the system itself, very simple, nothing complicated, and we'll get on the sump in a minute, but it's a 40-gallon breeder. It's, at the end of the day, a fish only. I don't need all the fancy equipment. I just need pure mechanical filtration with a little bit of biological, and the skimmer's down there as well. But before we go down there, I just want to talk about these lights. I honestly don't know what they are. If you guys know, leave a comment, but I haven't been able to find exactly the brand on these. I think they're just kind of like a cheaper, not well-known brand, but they are very, very powerful, and the spectrum on them is something that I really do like. We'll see as time goes on how they do, but so far so good. And they came with the tank, and I think they're low profile. It doesn't take away from the look of the setup itself, since it's pretty sleek. I didn't really want to have like a big giant lighting system on top of this, and again, it's a fish only. I'm not going to do anything super complicated, just enough to light the tank and grow a few easy corals and the macroalgae, which I just put in today. So yeah, the lights, plumbing, very simple. Couple wave makers, again, your cheap off-brand wave makers, they have been doing great. The controllers on them are a little iffy, but at the end of the day, they're working, they're moving water, and I'm liking the flow pattern in this tank. Okay, let's talk about what's in the tank. I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet. You guys have probably seen bajillions of tank tour setup videos, so I'm just going to blast through this and show you what's in the tank, why I set it up the way I did, and all that good stuff. So, bunch of live rock, whole bunch of different types. I kind of put them together from all different places. Some used. I bought some new stuff, but there's a bunch of shelf, bunch of random marker rocks. There's some natural live rock thrown in there as well. But I did a bunch of arches. You guys can see this big one here. Big arch there, little caves about, just so fish can have some swim throughs. And if we have more cryptic species that are a little bit more shy, they definitely have places to hide where I can't even see them. I think that's pretty important because a lot of the times when you're setting up a new fish tank, you do your rock work, but the fish can hide, but in places you can always kind of stare at them, and they can't really have somewhere they can completely be secluded. So I wanted to do that in this tank just because I think that can be a big stress reducer. If a fish can just go back, be completely tucked away, I can't see him, he can do his own thing. And yeah, this de-stress after a big move, getting shipped, getting put into a new tank. So lots of that going on. I wanted to make it a little bit taller just because if I do get some fish that are a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more territorial, I can have a lot of barriers be broken. So big wall, bunch of swim throughs, bunch of barriers. I do plan on putting a little more dead coral on top, like this big stylo colony. I'm lucky enough to get them through my work, which is awesome. But I have a couple more pieces that I will throw in here. And I think the extra height, almost all the way to the top of the water, is pretty awesome. So, and I think it's a good balance because I also want swim space, of course, just because some of these fish can be very athletic, and you know, not having places where they can fully swim around and be super active in the flow is just not what I want to do. So, yes, lots of rock, lots of arches, lots of caves, especially for smaller fish. Like, there's spots in here that I didn't even know I created when I was creating it. It just kind of came together like that. And, you know, some of these caves go all the way up through. On top of some of these shelves, the rocks that sit on top, there's even like little smaller caves in there. So there's a ton, and I really am happy with it because even in the back of some of these caves here, it's pretty dark, and that's kind of what I wanted. So yeah, pretty simple stuff. I didn't do anything complicated. I just kind of started stacking rock and seeing how I liked it, and I just, again, really wanted to create the swim throughs, the caves for the fish. So very happy with how it turned out, and yeah, that's about all I have to say for it. I think it turned out good, and I think there's no particular way to do it. People always say like, oh, how much live rock should I put in? Should I put in this much, this much? I don't think it matters. I think having more is usually good if you have enough swim space, but it's just more surface area for bacteria to grow on and more things to colonize with. So yeah, that's the rock for you. So I'm sure you guys have noticed, but I do have some macroalgae in here, and I think it might be the direction I go with this tank, just because it's beneficial in a lot of ways. First of which, for nutrient control. This tank is running a little bit higher than my tanks usually do. It's sitting at about 0.8 phosphate and like 35 nitrate. So I think the macroalgae will actually really like it and bring those numbers down a little bit. And that's not to say that those numbers are necessarily bad at all, but I just think it'll make my life easier just because I won't necessarily have to dose nitrate and phosphate, because a lot of the time people do, especially in smaller systems. So that's just an added bonus. But otherwise, I think, you know, down the line, if I end up getting fish that like to graze on some algae, it would be kind of cool to just have a really established population of macroalgae of different species in this tank, so they can kind of like slowly pick away at them and do their thing without completely decimating the population. So, you know, fresh food for their diet is great, and I think having the macros would be perfect for that. And I think the whole look of it, and you know, kind of like the planted reef as people call them, that whole look became very popular, and I've always really liked it. So I'm definitely going to explore more macroalgae, see how these guys do, and go from there. Other than that, like I was saying, easy corals. There's some gorgonians that have been in here. I've had them for a little while. And they do really good. These are actually the photosynthetic kinds, so similar in care to something like a leather coral. They just like their flow. They're not looking super happy right now, mainly because of the treatments that did go into the tank. Like I said, we'll mention those in a minute here, but yeah, gorgonians, the macroalgaes, perhaps some sponges when the tank is a little more established. I think that would be a really cool look, and it would be beneficial for the species I'm going to choose. Is it go?
It is go.
Welcome to the floor, everyone. How did that get there? There's a sponge running away. Anyways, this is the sump. Again, super simple. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. 40-gallon breeder. We 3D printed these 7-inch filter sock holders on each side. Because like I was saying earlier, both of those returns come down and they're completely separate from each other. So this is the right one and that is the left one. So the two socks have been very efficient, very pleased with them. And other than that, you know, I just have some various biomedia down here. I got some sponge growing. There's some sponge scattered about. There's a little bag of carbon floating around. There's a heater, of course, my auto top off, the return pump, and one of the Red Sea protein skimmers. It's not on right now, just because there's only 4 little tiny fish in this tank, all of which are bar gobies. They're, to my surprise, absolutely bulletproof. I think they're the most hardy fish in all of this hobby. And again, we'll go over that, but yeah, this is the sump itself. Really simple. I don't need anything special. I don't need any fancy equipment. And I still have some extra room if I want to throw in my media reactor if I get to that point. But no, really simple. And I like how it's running. It's been fairly quiet, especially with the front panels on that just stick on with magnets. So really good stuff. And of course, auto top off here. Got a 20-gallon fish tank. So that'll give me a lot of volume, so I'm not filling it up super frequently because it does evaporate pretty quick, because in Colorado, summers can be pretty dry as well as winters. So various fish medication products, some of which I haven't used, but a lot of which I have. And I think that'll be a good segue to talk about some of the issues I've had with this tank. And at the end, we'll go over my fish plans and just the overall idea for this fish tank. Okay, so you may be wondering why there's a random 90-gallon fish tank sitting here. This is actually a tank I had set up earlier this year that I had been using for a while. It just ended up, like I said, got a great deal on the big tank, so I upgraded. It's been, I don't know, 2 or 3 months. The reason it's still here is because I was having problems here. So I introduced a new fish, an NUR's Angel, very amazing fish, when the tank was still about 3 weeks to a month old. So because of that, the microbiome in this tank still isn't really that established. Because you can say a tank is cycled, which it is, but the substance within everything just doesn't really have a hold yet. So it's still, there's not a lot of substance to it, if that makes sense. So what ended up happening, and what conclusion we came down to, is that these fish, the angel, some cardinals, cleaner wrasse, got infected with a gram-positive bacterial infection. So, you know, obviously we see these first signs of the fish being stressed out, and a very clear one is little white splotches on the pectoral fins, as well as a little bit of ick coming up every morning. It's because of the stress, because of this bacterial, ectoparasites like ick can really take advantage of that and come in very fast. But keeping this in mind, we treated with hydrogen peroxide first. Didn't really see much success, didn't really see much improvement, maybe a little bit. But as this progressed and got worse, the peroxide would have just needed to be dosed more. I don't have the means to do that. I don't have a dosing pump, but say we were dosing it throughout the day constantly, it could have helped. And at the end of the day, it helped the ick, but the ick wasn't the problem. So as time went on, we were dosing Canaplex. The problem with Canaplex is that it doses or treats for gram negative, and this was a gram-positive bacterial infection. They claim to treat some gram-positive bacterial infections, which is probably true, but the spectrum of gram-positive bacterial infections is probably pretty broad, and the Canoplex just couldn't do that. And there's really no way for us to know in that moment without getting the fish which one is which. There are other medications that do treat gram-positive, like ChemiClean, but again, by the time it progressed and how fast it was moving, we didn't have time, we lost the fish. So the steps now for this tank are to let it sit, let the bacteria establish itself, because it was going to be compromised because of the medications we did use. So getting it reestablished, not really messing with it much, is key right now, because the ick parasite is not the concern, because no matter what you do, in most cases ick is going to be present in your tank. A lot of the times you never see it and never see the effects of it, because fish's slime coats, if it's a healthy fish, ick can't do anything. So you won't see it on the fish. It'll basically just be dormant. And again, as new fish come in, ick's probably going to come around, so treating for that, to me, right now, would be redundant. Anyways, fish plans. With that little spiel out of the way, we'll talk about the plans for this. In the future, we're going to take a way more in-depth dive on this stuff, but for the means of this video, it's not really worth it to get in. But stay tuned for it, because we will talk about bacterial infections, all the other parasites and nasties that your fish could have. So stay tuned. We'll leave that for now. And as of how long to let this tank sit before we get fish, I can't say. It's whenever I feel confident and whenever I can get another fish in here that does well. Anyways, so the 90, these guys. There's actually a really cool fish in here that's going to go in the 230. He's not in here, of course, because I'm a little hesitant to put anything in here right now because of the issues I had. So he's living in here, and it's a really cool fish. I can't exactly say the species name. I don't have a 100% I know what this is. However, it is a type of soapfish, and it is most likely a greater soapfish. Super awesome fish. It's a fish that'll get a little over a foot long at max size. Super unique. They are technically a type of grouper, so you know, if you have a fully grown one, maybe be careful if you're adding little tiny fish, because he might go after them. But he's eating very well right now. He's loving his little rock home with his little 3-striped damsel friend. They're doing great in here, but we're just holding off to move these guys over until I'm confident, and we'll break this 90 down. But you'll get a good look at the soapfish soon, and it's just going to be a super cool addition, because my goal for this tank is to have fish that are a little more uncommon in the hobby, you could say, ones that we don't know a ton about, like the soapfish. It's just one of those fish you don't see every day, and they're super unique and just have such different behaviors than everything else. And with the other fish, I do want to get some oddballs. One of my big ones is definitely going to be a wire-tail hogfish. If you guys have not seen one, go look them up. They're super cool. Again, not one you see often. No one really keeps them, and I think it would be super cool. And it's a great size fish for this tank because they don't get huge. It's not going to be something that's super invasive. And he would do great here, and he would love all the caves and rocks and whatnot. I think some of my other ideas, I would love to do a pair of parrotfish, specifically the koi parrotfish. I think that would be super cool because they are hermaphroditic, so they're all born one gender, and they'll turn male somewhere down the line, one like a clownfish would. So that would be super cool. Again, they don't get huge. It's a very bright and colorful fish. That would be super interactive. Something I've never kept personally. I've never kept a parrotfish, and I think, you know, they're super smart fish, and they would be really funny to look at and watch them interact with each other. I think I would learn a ton about them. But other than that, there's just some other weird ones. I would love to do a species of drum. I would love to do whatever else was on my list. I want to do a pair of Auriga butterflies. Those have always been one of my favorite fish. I can't really tell you why. I just love them. I think doing that would be awesome. I think doing some weird inverts would be cool. Ones that, you know, won't eat my macroalgae would be great. But I think weird inverts, some weird fish, nothing that get huge, and just stuff that's kind of new to me and new things I can learn. Just because when it comes to a lot of the fish-only fish, there's not a ton of information on them. You know, you see them, people will have them, but you know, in a small scale like this, I think we could learn a bunch. And yeah, I think weird, unique fish in this tank is going to be in the direction I want to take. Okay, so that's going to wrap up this video. Thank you guys for stopping by. Definitely look forward. I would like to do a whole series on this fish tank. I think it would be awesome filming vlogs, going to go pick up the fish, acclimating the fish, dipping the fish, just showing my whole process and everything that's going on. I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to hide it from you guys. I want to be completely honest. I want to be completely transparent, and I want to show you everything. So this is just a little introduction. I tried to keep it as short as I could, but look forward to the next videos because some good things are coming. It might be a little while since right now it's kind of at a standstill, but there are some cool inverts I'd like to put in, so if I do that, we'll totally film it and show you guys. So thanks for stopping by. We'll see you soon, and thank you for watching the video. See you guys next time.